Hey everyone. I'm going to get started talking about declarative blockchains and what we're building at Essential and how you can build on us. So a sort of quick caveat as to what we've got going on today. Unfortunately, none of our devs were actually able to make it due to some visa issues and some other scheduling stuff. So I recommend everyone check out the Pint workshop. QR code's there, otherwise just on the ETHGlobal YouTube channel. That'll give you a sort of live coding workshop that details how to set it up and all of that stuff. And then, there's only a handful of us, but when it gets to the questions component, I'm happy to answer questions about the overall model and the declarative architecture, but more technical questions about the language and all of that stuff, we can direct you to our devs on Discord and have a back and forth there. So yeah, okay. Basically, let's start out just introducing the declarative and imperative programming paradigms to understand, what it is that we're actually building at Essential and how you can build on us. So in computer science, obviously, I'm sure most of you are devs, so you'll know the basics of these two paradigms. Basically, imperative programming paradigms describe how a problem should be solved using explicit instructions. So the developer outlines instructions in sort of an algorithmic step-by-step execution format, and the priority is to follow the instructions regardless of the outcome. Then declarative programming, on the other hand, expresses what a program should accomplish rather than how. So the developer specifies the desired outcome without dictating how to achieve it, and ultimately the valid outcome is prioritized over the instructions. So you can think of some imperative languages like Java and C++. I'm sure you probably already know. Declarative languages include like SQL, Haskell, and of course what we're building at Essential with our declarative DSL called Pint. Okay, so the current state of blockchains is that they're basically all imperative, at least since the advent of Ethereum as like a general purpose smart contract blockchain. The imperative model has been the prevailing paradigm in blockchain development. And what this means in practice is that users and smart contract developers interact with the blockchain and update state via executing instructions, i.e. imperative, rather than declaring their desired outcomes in a declarative way. So most of you have probably heard of the vending machine analogy for smart contracts. The idea is that it's basically a simple self-enforcing contract and that it should enable automatic execution and remove the need for trusted intermediaries. So Ethereum says that the benefit of smart contracts is that they deterministically execute unambiguous code when certain conditions are met. And they don't need to wait for some sort of agent to interpret or negotiate the result. But this kind of masks the fact that imperative smart contracts, while they have unambiguous code execution, actually leave a huge amount of room for ambiguity when it comes to what end state you end up getting. And so to understand why, let's look at the current state of smart contract interactions using this metaphor a little bit more deeply. So say you go up to a vending machine and you know that you want to buy a bag of Doritos. So you walk over, you have to select whatever slot the Doritos are in, let's say it's A2, and then you insert your money. So at this point, this is the equivalent of having initiated a transaction on an imperative blockchain. But then, while you're waiting for your order to be processed, someone comes around the back, switches out all of the stock in the vending machine, and all of a sudden there's no more Doritos, and you're left with a machine full of Coca-Cola or whatever else, something that you didn't want. And so what's happened here is that this person has been able to change the state of the vending machine after you submitted your transaction, but before it has actually been executed. And so then when these instructions that you entered finally are executed, you don't end up getting what you wanted, but the crucial thing to note is that you actually do get what you asked for, because under this model, it's not possible to ask for a bag of Doritos. The system doesn't have an internal conception of what that is. So the best you can do is say, give me the item in slot A2 and hope that the state of the chain matches what you anticipated when the transaction is executed. And this is because the imperative blockchain state machine system has this concept of an intermediate state between block A and block B, the space in which transactions are being executed, and the state can change and be manipulated, and things can happen during this intermediate state. So people, I'm sure, will all know this as the dark forest, as it's called in the Ethereum world. And basically, it was originally an unintended side effect of imperative blockchain designs. But there's a lot of people today who make money exploiting this dynamic, and for them, it's not really a bug; it's more of a feature. So there's actually an entire industry that's dedicated to tinkering with the vending machine in order to extract value from these unsuspecting end users, and that is what is known as MEV or the dark forest or any of these kinds of things. And so basically the philosophy we take at Essential is that we don't think it should be possible to do this. And even the Ethereum yellow paper states that users should be able to interact with the system with absolute confidence in the possible outcomes. It's not something that's currently possible today, and that word outcomes obviously brings us back to the declarative model, and that sort of philosophy is what gave us ideas around how to build this into a blockchain. So if this imperative paradigm is so limiting and users and developers and networks are all struggling because of it, then why hasn't a different approach been used? Well, actually, people have been talking about using declarative approaches to smart contract developing since as early as 2018. Influential members of the community have proposed this as an alternative. But even though it's been discussed over the years, it's only really started to gain traction in early 2023 when the concept of intents came about in the blockchain space and really started to get attention. So projects like CowSwap, Uniswap X, 1inch Fusion, you might have heard of some of those, are sort of have been bringing the intent philosophy into the forefront. And the core principle of intents is that they allow users to sign over their intended interaction in terms of outcomes, which is declarative, rather than in terms of instructions or transactions, which is the imperative model. But the way that most of these projects actually implement this is that at some point during the transaction supply chain, it still turns the outcomes that the user has expressed back into instructions that need to be settled. So because they're still using imperative state machines like the EVM or SVM or really any other state machine to achieve settlement, that means that ultimately at some point a solver needs to come in and turn this user's expressed outcome back into a transaction. So basically, this is still like the vending machine model, but just with extra steps. They, let you to just get somebody else, like a solver, to interact with the vending machine on your behalf. But ultimately, this risk of losses and like unintended consequences that comes from the imperative model and the dark forest still exists. It's just about whether the risk has been passed on to some other party. So people are building solutions that make the solver take accountability for the result they deliver, rather than have the user take accountability if the outcome doesn't actually reflect what they expressed. But ultimately, it's still passing the fundamental issue onto someone else and not actually reducing the amount of extraction. So we propose just getting rid of the vending machine. If we can't defend it against the people who want to exploit it and its users, despite many, many efforts to reduce or mitigate MEV, then what can we do instead? Well, now that we have all of these intent projects and solver networks spinning up, we have these agents that are ready to come and step in and execute contracts on behalf of users rather than have them be always self-enforcing. So we propose using them to directly fulfill users' intents. And so with this, we propose the idea of a declarative blockchain. So these are blockchains that leverage constraints to achieve state updates without the need for execution. So there's a few kind of important things in here. The constraint component is closely tied with declarative programming, where interactions or intents are expressed in the form of constraints on state. And then because we're able to directly constrain state, execution can actually be removed from the blockchain or transaction supply chain entirely, because you're able to just directly update from state A to state B without having computation along the way. So this means that, not only is there no on-chain execution, but actually no in-protocol conception of execution at all. So basically, to go a little bit deeper, the entire flow in this system is declarative from beginning to end. So the first step is the intent, user interactions. So they submit their intent in the form of constraints on state, meaning that basically users can ask for exactly what they want in terms of outcomes, And the user experience or the flow on the front end is actually similar to the current model, because what users do right now is just click some buttons and say, this is what I want. But what they're doing when they actually sign over these inputs is that they're signing over their intent in the form of enforceable rules, constraints on state, rather than just a set of instructions to be executed. The next step is that smart contracts in the system are also declarative. They are built in Essential with our DSL called Pint for programmable intents. And basically, these also consist purely of constraints on state. So instead of outlining these specific instructions to be executed, they just outline the rules that govern what can be considered a valid new state. And that any intent that interacts with them just has to fulfill those rules and meet all the constraints. And then finally, the state machine itself is fully declarative. So basically, when users submit intents, solvers are then waiting to ingest those, search for solutions off-chain. So there's a computation component, but that doesn't have to happen in protocol. And then these solvers can directly propose their solutions in the form of state updates. So there's no need for any execution VM, just a constraint checking VM. So what happens on chain is not actually the computation of how to progress state, but just that new state is proposed, and then the on-chain component is just checking that all of the constraints have been met. This is obviously a lot more lightweight than doing all of the execution in an on-chain and redundant environment, and moves all of the sort of more heavy computation off-chain. So this looks more like a true distributed ledger. When you think about what you want out of a ledger, it's just a record of the current state of the system, but doesn't necessarily have to contain inside it the logic for how to update the ledger. So by moving all of that stuff off-chain, we achieve a bunch of efficiency and make it also a lot easier from a smart contract development perspective as well. Okay, so getting a little bit more specific about Essential, we're building an Ethereum layer 2. It's not based on any particular VM or existing stack. Rather, we're building a completely new VM from the ground up that is purely just based on this constraint checking philosophy. But obviously, we will be interoperable with the rest of the blockchain ecosystem, other L2s, and posting blocks directly to L1 Ethereum. And so, to build applications in this environment, developers such as yourselves will be using Pint, which is our constraint-based domain-specific language for programmable intents. We've been building this for the past sort of a little over a year now. And it's basically designed specifically to interact with our constraint VM. And so what to build today? We're still relatively early stage at this point. We have a DevNet up, and we're just getting people to start exploring and building and understanding what do applications look like in the declarative paradigm, and what do smart contracts look like under this model. So we're mainly focusing on DeFi, so we're encouraging people to build really any early stage DeFi primitives, anything as simple as trying to optimize a token contract. We've already got some in our docs that you can check out, but figure out if you can build one that's better or more efficient than what we've got. Other things are like AMMs, lending protocols, name service. You can go with something pretty simple. Otherwise, interoperability is another really good one. And if you want to do something a little bit more complex, maybe an options protocol or an order book DEX would be really cool. If you have an idea for something that's within the ecosystem, maybe it's interoperability or it's a solver thing, it doesn't necessarily use Pint, or it's not built in Pint, but it's still sort of a tool for the ecosystem. Chat to us about it, because we'll let you know whether it sort of meets the prize criteria. But ultimately we're looking for people to build anything that they're inspired to build that helps build out the essential ecosystem. And our first prize is $8K and 2 runners up at $1K each. So that's really the only prize track that we're doing. So like I said at the beginning, some of you might have missed it. This was a very high-level talk. We have a sort of Pint workshop and walkthrough on the ETHGlobal YouTube channel. So please feel free to check that out. Join our Discord. Links are up there, and from there you can chat to our devs, understand a little bit more. if you have any deeper questions around how the language works or what you might be able to build, or if you have any challenges with building, our people will be there to answer all of those. That's it from me. Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
We see an example of Pint in code, like real.
Is there an example of Pint? Yeah, I can. Take you back to the beginning here. Can I zoom in? Is the question. No, let me. The question was just: is there an example of Pint? So let me see if I can bring it up. Oh, it doesn't seem to be coming up now. So I will. If you go to the docs, I'll bring the slide back up there. There are plenty of examples of Pint in there, and a getting started guide as well.
Okay, second question is EVM compatible?
So the question is it EVM compatible? So currently it's not directly EVM compatible, so applications built in Pint will be deployed on Essential and will reason about state on Essential. And so if you have a Solidity application or anything else, at this stage it just requires a rewrite. There is a sort of future roadmap item where eventually we'll be able to ideally run the EVM on our chain itself in the constraint VM. But yeah, at this stage, that's a future thing.
Is that rewrite changing the addresses of the pre-compiled or rewrite from Solidity to Pint?
Yeah, so the application will need to be written in Pint, basically. But yeah, I encourage you to check out some of the examples, basically, because you don't have to actually go into all of the idiosyncrasies of how to interact with the execution VM. All you have to do is outline application logic. So it's actually a lot more simple, what you need to include in a smart contract. Because really it's just outlining the logic or the rules that need to be met in order for state to be updated.
Okay, two last questions. Do you have any scheme to control how fees are paid? Can I sponsor a fee or can I do a zero fee? That's one thing. The other question would be, is there a bridge between your EVM and other EVMs? You would go to talk some way to another smart contract written with a different.
So the first question was?
The fees.
The fees. So there is a fee mechanism. Basically, the way it works is when solvers propose a solution, they'll be able to take a cut from the price that they're able to pull on chain. Let's say it's for a swap, and they are finding that liquidity for a user. As part of their solution, they're able to take a cut from that. And the question is how much do they keep for themselves? How much do they end up passing back on to the user? But because solvers are all competing and the optimal solution for the user is the one that is the winning solution or will get selected, there's a sort of competitive market dynamic, almost like an auction in there, where solvers are incentivized to bid as much value back to the user as possible in order to prevent not being the winning solution.
So that's the user who read the transaction. He has to be the payer. If I'm making a transaction, I have to pay for it. I cannot have someone else paying for me. It has to be in the same transition, the transaction and the fee.
Oh, I see. No. You can also have sponsored fees. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And the second question would be, if there is a bridge between your EVM and other EVMs, so I can write something in Pint and have it talking through a bridge or something to another EVM.
Yeah, so our canonical bridge to the layer 1 Ethereum for the purposes of settling, for finality on the L1, will be able to communicate directly with Ethereum. Other interoperability solutions, we're talking to a bunch of chain abstraction protocols and bridging interop solutions. So right now we just have a DevNet up, and so any of that interop isn't currently live. But yeah, obviously we will be bridging to other all other layer 2s and non-EVM ecosystems as well.
But that network can go to another test network. As of now.
Oh, right. As of now, is there a yeah? So for this hackathon, no, there's no bridge between the DevNet and any other chains. Sorry, I was confused by the question. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, happy to chat afterwards as well.